Welcome to ArtBookNook. My name is Kay and I share and review my collection of art and craft books. Today we're going to look at 101 Watercolor Secrets by Anna Bucciarelli. So whether you're a novice or seasoned artist, 101 Watercolor Secrets promises to be an indispensable resource that offers practical guidance, artistic inspiration and a wealth of knowledge to elevate your craft. This book has 253 pages with lovely print and excellent paper quality. Each of the 101 tips is spread across roughly 2 pages, which does affect how I'll walk you through it. I might be stating the obvious, so this could be a long video, so feel free to pause here, grab a drink and get comfy. The book is thoughtfully divided into 10 main sections, which makes it really easy to navigate, especially when you're looking for something specific. You can dip in and out, find exactly what you need and return to it whenever necessary. The sections include decoding pigment labels, exploring colour families, building your signature palette, tools that matter, essential techniques, favourite subjects, dealing with challenges and common frustrations, composition secrets, Anna's favourite tips and tricks, and unveiling your potential with strategies for growth in watercolour painting. Phew! In the introduction, Anna shares that this book is the result of over a decade of exploration, shaped by the most common challenges and stumbling blocks Anna encountered along her own watercolour journey. She's clear that this isn't a step-by-step project book, but instead, by sharing her extensive knowledge, tips and techniques, she offers strategies to help you grow and refine your own skills as a watercolour artist. On the left-hand page, we see one of Anna's paintings, a lovely example of her signature style. Section 1 is all about decoding pigment labels. Have you ever looked at a paint tube and wondered what all those little symbols and codes actually mean? Anna explains how understanding those labels can actually help you choose colours that work better together, which makes building your own colour palette a lot easier. We start with pigment codes. Every pigment has a unique code. It always begins with the letter P for pigment, followed by a letter for the colour family like Y for yellow or R for red, and then a number, for example PY129. So when you're shopping for paint, manufacturers often give their colours lovely poetic names, things like lunar blue or moon glow. But how are you supposed to know what's actually in the tube just from the name? That's where pigment codes really help. On the right-hand page, you'll see 2 swatches of green gold paint from different brands. One is made with a single pigment, PY129, and the other is a mix of 3 pigments, PY150, PY3 and PG36. Take a moment to notice the difference between them. Same name, but the colour and behaviour can be quite different. These kinds of pigment combinations, all mixed into a single tube, are really just convenience mixes, but there's nothing stopping you from creating your own. Buying a pre-mixed version does mean the colour will be consistent every time, which is handy, but when you mix your own, you can tweak the pigment ratios and shift the colour temperature, for example. And just a quick note, at the bottom of some pages in the book, you'll see a mention of a video. These direct you to the publisher's website, but all of those videos are available on Anna's own YouTube channel, which I've linked to in the description below. Granulating pigments are often marked with the letter G. If you don't see that on the label, it usually means the paint is non-granulating. So what's the difference? Well, granulating pigments have slightly larger, heavier particles. As they settle into the texture of the paper, they create a beautiful grainy effect. It's a bit unpredictable, but quite magical. They're very good for things like stone walls, where you want the natural texture to come through. Non-granulating pigments, on the other hand, give you smooth, even washes, and they're perfect for when you're painting delicate transitions, like soft flower petals. One of my personal favourites is Haze Blue by Schminke. The transparency rating tells you how much light can pass through a layer of pigment, and it ranges from completely opaque to fully transparent. It's shown using 4 different symbols, and once you get to know them, that will really help you predict how a colour will behave on the page. Transparent pigments are brilliant for glazing. That's where you build up colour in layers. Each layer adds depth, creating a luminous glowing effect. Opaque pigments, on the other hand, are great for bold, flat areas of colour. They're dense, they block out the light, and they can even help cover up small mistakes or changes you want to make. In the description below, I've linked to 2 other book reviews. The first is all about transparent watercolours, and the second is how you can use opaque paints. And under bonus links, I've linked to the American Transparent Watercolour Society, an organisation promoting art using only pure transparent watercolour. I think it'd be an interesting exercise to paint 2 identical scenes, one using transparent pigments and the other opaque pigments only, and then compare the 2. When we talk about light fastness, we're really talking about how well a pigment holds up over time, how long it will keep its vibrancy without fading or breaking down. Pigments are usually rated as excellent, good or poor. Those with a poor rating are often called fugitive because, well, they tend to fade and deteriorate over time. On the right-hand page, Anna shows this with a painting of a peony. One version is painted with light-fast quinacridone magenta and the other with fugitive opera pink. If you're creating artwork to sell, it's important to choose pigments with an excellent light fastness rating. The staining property tells us how much a pigment sinks into the paper, or how easy it is to lift off once it's dry. Pigments are usually rated as non-staining, semi-staining or staining. Non-staining colours can be lifted pretty easily with a damp brush or tissue, while staining ones tend to leave a lasting bold mark on the page. On the right-hand page, you'll see a pair of cloud studies. The one on the left was painted with low-staining cobalt blue, PB28, and the one on the right with staining phthalo blue red shade, PB156. Take a close look at the cobalt blue study. You can really see how the paint has been lifted in places to create those soft wispy cloud effects. And this concludes Chapter 1, Decoding Pigment Labels. So we'll now move on to Chapter 2, Exploring Colour Families. Watercolour pigments can be grouped into 7 families, each with its own unique character and bit of history behind it. Some of the earliest colours came straight from the earth, things like ochres, siennas and umbers, all made from minerals and clays. These are the natural grounding pigments that artists have used for centuries. As chemistry has evolved, so has colour, with new pigments developed, expanding the range far beyond what was once possible. In this chapter, Anna introduces some of her favourite colour families, sharing what makes each one special and how they can be used effectively in your own watercolour work. We'll look at each family in turn so you can get to know their personalities and how they behave on the page. We start with the quinacridone family, a group of synthetic organic pigments that are favourites among watercolour artists. They're known for their rich vibrancy, beautiful transparency and excellent light fastness, which is great news for us. Quinacridones are really lovely for glazing, where their clarity shines through. Layer by layer, they build up luminous glowing colour without getting muddy. On the right-hand page, Anna has listed a few of her personal favourites and why and where she uses them. Next up is the phthalo family, another group of synthetic organic pigments, but this time they lean towards the blues and greens. They're incredibly vibrant, bold, intense colours that can really pack a punch. Phthalos are also brilliant mixers. They mix well with other colours, letting you create a huge range of secondary and tertiary hues. Whether you're after a bright turquoise or a deep forest green, the phthalo family gives you so much flexibility. So what are synthetic organic pigments? How can something be synthetic and organic at the same time? Well, apparently, synthetic simply means it's man-made, created in a lab rather than mined from the earth, and organic, in this context, doesn't mean natural. It refers to the pigment's chemical structure, which is based on carbon, just like all living things. Perylene colours are an interesting family of pigments, known for their rich deep tones and really impressive light fastness. Each shade in the range has its own unique character. One favourite of Anna's in particular is Peroline Green. She often uses it in her botanical work, especially when she wants to add those dark moody shadows to background foliage. It's also a great mixer, perfect for deepening other colours in your palette. The earth pigments are derived from minerals found in the Earth's crust. Often referred to as nature's gift, they provide a rich spectrum of warm, muted hues. Sienna pigments originate from the Italian city of Siena and are obtained from natural iron oxides, providing warm reddish hues. Ochres present more golden yellow colours, and umbres, named after the Italian word for shadow, ombra, encompass cooler, darker browns. This family of pigments has stood the test of time. Used by the old masters, they are perfect for landscapes and portraits. Cobalt pigments first gained popularity with the rise of French Impressionism, exemplified by Claude Monet's serene water scenes and Renoir's figurative paintings. Cobalt teal is one of the prominent colours used in Vincent van Gogh's beautiful painting Starry Night. Cobalt blue, CB28, is an excellent choice for artists. It offers a reliable go-to blue without the complexities of green or red undertones. The Pyrrole family of pigments is a relatively modern innovation to the artist's palette, but they offer a gorgeous range of reds and oranges and are known for their excellent light fastness, meaning your work will stay vibrant over time. These colours are perfect for things like botanical paintings, autumn landscapes, or capturing the warmth of a sunset. This brings us to the last family of pigments, speciality pigments. These offer a fascinating array of unique qualities, enabling you to create stunning effects in your artwork. Some of Anna's personal favourites include the supergranulating mineral pigments and iridescent pigments. Anna encourages you to experiment and explore these and discover which ones resonate with your own artistic style. We've now arrived at Chapter 3, Building Your Signature Palette. In this chapter, Anna walks us through her simple 4-step approach to creating a signature palette that's both personal and practical. She reminds us that there's really no such thing as a perfect palette. It's all about choosing colours that speak to your own painting style and the subjects you love to paint. Step 1 is to start with a primary triad. Anna recommends choosing 3 primary colours in both warm and cool versions, so that's 6 colours to begin with. In step 2, she suggests adding a few subject-based staples. So for example, if you love painting landscapes, you'll most likely want to include some earthy pigments that reflect the natural world. Step 3 is all about including a few personal favourites, colours that spark your creativity or just make you happy. One of Anna's go-to pigments is opera pink. It's vibrant and beautiful, although she realises it's not light fast, so it only makes its way into certain pieces. And finally, step 4, you can keep things fresh by experimenting. Try adding a few playful or unusual colours from time to time, like some of the gorgeous granulating pigments available. On the right-hand page, Anna shares 12 of her own favourite pigments. She also provides a helpful tip. If you're feeling stuck, copy the palette of an artist you admire as a starting point. Now Anna takes us through her favourite pigments one by one, sharing what she loves about each of them and how they appear in her work. We begin with dioxazine purple, pigment PV23, which Anna describes as her signature colour. It's a recurring theme throughout her portfolio and a shade she returns to again and again. This rich, transparent coal tar pigment has a deep, vivid hue with a cool blue-leaning undertone. In the Purple Iris case study, Anna explains exactly how she used dioxazine purple to bring out the delicate shadows and depth in the flower petals. Next we have phthalo blue-green shade, pigment PB15-3, which Anna uses as one of her primary blue colours. It's a beautiful, vibrant blue that works especially well for painting hydrangeas, forget-me-nots or seascapes. Because it's a non-granulating pigment, Anna often prefers it over the more traditional ultramarine, especially when she's after a smooth, even wash. Quinacridone magenta, pigment PR122, is one of Anna's chosen primary reds. It's a transparent staining colour with a wide mixing range, making it incredibly versatile. With this one pigment, you can create a rich variety of secondary and tertiary colours. It's perfect for capturing the soft pinks of peonies or cherry blossom, and it also makes a beautiful base for mixing realistic skin tones in portrait work. Cadmium yellow is Anna's primary yellow of choice, though she opts for a non-toxic alternative made by Daniel Smith, cadmium yellow medium hue. This version is a carefully balanced mix of three pigments, PY53, PY151 and PY83, and it closely mimics the qualities of traditional cadmium yellow. When blended with the slightly granulating ultramarine blue, it creates a lovely range of natural greens, perfect for painting foliage and layered landscapes. On its own, it's a vibrant choice for capturing the cheerful glow of daffodils, yellow roses or tulips. Perylene violet, pigment PV29, is what Anna calls a hidden gem, especially for botanical paintings. It's earned its place in her palette as a true jewel. When fully saturated, it leans towards a rich dark brown, perfect for adding depth and shadows. But once diluted, it reveals a completely different personality, soft and luminous, like a juicy grape or a ripe plum. It's this versatility that makes it such a favourite with Anna for florals and natural subjects. Indigo has a fascinating history. Originally extracted from the Indigofera plant through careful process of fermentation and oxidisation, the traditional version wasn't light fast and would fade over time. Modern formulations now give artists the best of both worlds, deep moody blue with much improved permanence. Anna's favourite mix comes from Daniel Smith, a blend of PB60 and PBK6. Each manufacturer's version is slightly different, with variations in warmth, coolness and granulation, so no two indigos are quite the same. It's a brilliant choice for value studies, and Anna often uses it as a softer, more nuanced alternative to pure black. It's especially lovely in botanical work and captures the rich tones of blueberries or blackberries. Anna describes pyrrole orange as an orange unlike any other. Developed in the late 20th century as a safer alternative to the traditional but toxic cadmium orange, it's quickly earned its place in a modern palette. Anna loves using it as a thin glaze. It's perfect for gently warming up a composition or subtly shifting the colour temperature. And when mixed with vibrant blues, it creates a wonderful broad range of neutrals, from soft greys to rich earthy browns, making it a versatile pigment to have in your palette. According to Anna, Green Apatite Genuine is a granulating wonder. It's made from actual mineral deposits, and the pigment particles naturally separate on the paper, creating stunning organic washes filled with rich golden browns and lively mossy greens. One of Anna's favourite ways to use it is alongside a non-granulating colour like phthalo turquoise or hooker's green. The contrast between textures adds real visual depth and makes the composition come alive with movement and interest. Burnt sienna is a staple in many palettes, but Anna has a particular favourite. While most burnt sienna watercolours are made with the granulating pigment PBR7, she prefers the Winsor & Newton version, which uses transparent red iron oxide PR101. This gives her a warm rich brown with subtle reddish undertones and a beautifully smooth non-granulating finish. It mixes really easily when paired with ultramarine blue and creates a lovely range of neutral greys. Burnt sienna is especially well suited to animal studies and landscapes. Quinacridone coral brings a touch of luminosity to floral subjects, and also when capturing the fleeting beauty of a sunrise or sunset. In her rose study, Anna began with a delicate wash of Hansa yellow, just where the sunlight hits the petals. Then she layered over it with quinacridone coral to establish the base tone, following which she gently built up the colour in layers, adjusting the concentration to add richness and depth, while still preserving that glowing light-filled quality the pigment is known for. Aqua Green is a phthalo-based pigment available exclusively from Winsor & Newton. It's a relatively new pigment, and as of yet it hasn't been assigned a colour index number, but that hasn't stopped it from becoming one of Anna's go-to choices for botanical studies. Its fresh, vibrant hue brings a natural brightness to leaves and stems, and it would be perfect for seascapes. PR 122 is known as Opera Pink in the Daniel Smith range and Opera Rose by Winsor & Newton. It's basically a magenta pigment enhanced with a touch of fluorescent dye, rhodamine B, which gives it that unmistakable vibrancy. The result is a show-stopping glowing pink that leaps off the page, but unfortunately it's fugitive, meaning it's not light-fast and will fade over time. For artists who plan to sell their original work, this can pose a dilemma. However, if you scan or photograph your artwork for prints, the colour's brilliance is preserved. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 3, Building Your Signature Palette. Anna has generously shared her personal palette and walked us through her process, and while her art leans towards florals, with an illustrative style, which may or may not be your cup of tea, the method behind her pigment selection is incredibly thoughtful. It's a process that can save you both money and frustration in the long run. So let's take a look at Chapter 4, Tools That Matter. In this chapter, Anna will provide insights into how her preferred supplies can be used to achieve specific effects and techniques, but to bear in mind that what works for her may not align with your own personal watercolour journey. If there's one watercolour supply that matters more than anything else, it's your paper. Anna explores the big question, is 100% cotton paper really essential? She also looks at paper weight, how it's made, what to consider in terms of price and the different formats available. To wrap up, she shares her favourite paper choices for both finished artwork and everyday practice. Understanding the unique characteristics of hot-pressed, cold-pressed and rough paper can really help you choose the right surface for your personal style and the needs of your project. In this section, Anna explains how each type affects brushstrokes, drying time, and why certain finishes work better for things like botanical art, landscapes, and other painting genres. Sketching is often the first step in the painting process, so choosing the right pencil really matters. You want your lines to be visible, but still easy to erase. It all comes down to graphite strength. Anna walks you through how to understand the graphite scale, so you can pick the pencil that will work best for your project. Anna shares how to remove pencil marks without damaging your paper. Watercolour paper is especially made to absorb and hold water, which helps the paint flow and blend. But using an eraser too much or too harshly can damage the delicate fibres and affect how well the paper performs. Watercolour brushes come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, each designed for a specific purpose. But the truth is, you only actually need a couple of classic shapes to create even the most complex paintings. Anna walks you through the most common brush types, the kind of strokes they're best used for, and then she shares her favourite go-to brushes, the ones that she uses time and time again. When it comes to choosing paintbrushes, one of the first big decisions you'll face is whether to go with synthetic or natural bristles. Each has its own characteristics and advantages. In this section, Anna outlines the pros and cons of both types and shares some helpful tips to guide you to choose the right brush for your project. Travel brushes are an excellent choice if you enjoy painting on plein air. There are two main types you'll come across, each with its own benefits, and Anna explains the difference between the two. One of Anna's favourite travel brush sets is made by Skoda, a brand well known for its high quality craftsmanship. Anna shares some really useful tips on how to care for your brushes and make them last longer. She also explains how taking care of your brushes helps to avoid muddy colours in your paintings, keeping your work fresh and vibrant. We've all experienced the frustration of our paper drying too quickly, especially when trying to create smooth, seamless washes or cover large background areas. Anna's secret weapon for this is synthetic oxgall. It helps extend the drying time of your watercolour paint, which is very helpful if you live in a hot or dry climate. Anna shares 5 examples of where adding synthetic oxgall is her go-to solution. This brings us to masking fluid, a bit of a controversial tool in the watercolour world. Some artists avoid it altogether, while others fully embrace what it can do. Anna explains how and when to use masking fluid effectively. She also provides step-by-step instructions, along with several practical use cases and helpful tips to get the best results. One tool that I've never heard of before and that Anna discovered completely by accident is the anti-smudge glove. She discovered it quite by accident, but has found it's made a real difference to her painting experience. It gives her hand a smooth surface to glide over the paper, helping to prevent smudges and keeping her work clean. Paint palettes come in a range of materials, from plastic, metal and porcelain, and each has its own strengths and quirks. Anna takes us through the pros and cons of each type and shares her own approach to choosing and using palettes in her workspace. We've now reached the chapter in Anna's lovely book that I'm sure many of you have been looking forward to. Chapter 5, Essential Techniques. At the heart of every technique Anna explores in this chapter are two fundamental approaches, wet on wet and wet on dry. These simple concepts open the door to a vast array of effects, incorporating everything from timing, pigment saturation, to the way gravity moves the paint across the paper, and much, much more. We begin with wet on wet, a technique where wet paint is applied to a wet surface, allowing the colours to softly blend and diffuse. The results can be a little unpredictable, but that's exactly what gives watercolour its unique and magical qualities. Anna provides clear step-by-step instructions along with helpful tips for using gravity, dry standing and granulating pigments to your advantage. She also shares a list of her favourite wet on wet variations complete with examples. These include classic wet on wet, charging, wet on damp thick, wet on damp thin, gradient and variegated washes, damp on wet, spraying and pouring, blooming, using salt or alcohol, lifting and softening edges. And on page 98, Anna walks you through exactly how to achieve her personal favourite effects in more detail. Wet on dry is the technique of applying wet paint onto a dry surface. It offers much more precision and control, making it ideal for adding details or creating sharper edges in your work. Anna's favourite uses for the wet on dry technique include adding fine details, glazing and layering, negative painting and creating texture. She explains exactly how to achieve each of these step by step and includes an accompanying illustration to help you visualise the process. Anna feels that the wet on damp technique is one of the most underrated in watercolour. She explores it here in much greater depth, offering step-by-step instructions and showing exactly how she uses it in her own work, with clear illustrations to guide you along. On the right-hand page, Anna describes the charging technique as a splash of magic. Charging means adding different saturated pigments onto a wash that's partially dry, creating those vivid eye-catching colour transitions. The main difference between wet on wet and charging really comes down to timing, knowing just when your paint is ready for a splash of colour. Incorporating salt into your watercolour paintings can create some truly captivating effects. As the salt absorbs moisture from the paint, it leaves behind unique patterns and granulation that all add beautiful texture and interest to your work. You can sprinkle salt onto seascapes to capture the look of foam on crashing waves, or use it to suggest frost in winter landscapes, or simply add some interesting texture and visual excitement to an abstract painting. Leveraging gravity in your watercolour painting can create some really intriguing organic effects. It's a fantastic technique to use when you want to capture something like rain falling from clouds, letting the paint flow naturally and move across the paper. The lifting technique is all about lightening or removing paint from the paper's surface. It's a handy way to create highlights or even fix the odd little mistake. Of course, the pigment you select will make a big difference. As Anna mentioned earlier in her book, some pigments stain the paper more than others. On the right-hand page, she explains how she's applied the lifting technique in her painting of a sea lion, showing you exactly how it helped her bring out those highlights and textures. Glazing is all about applying successive layers of watercolour paint to build up and modify values. With each new glaze, you can create deeper tones and sometimes shift the overall colour and value balance in your painting. Drying time is essential. You must let each layer dry completely before adding the next to keep the layers crisp and vibrant. The X-ray technique is a fun and simple way for beginners to get started with glazing. Using just one pigment, you apply overlapping layers to create delicate effects like flower petals or insect wings. On the right-hand page, Anna has given you some helpful tips on how she applies this X-ray technique. And if that sounds interesting to you, you might really enjoy my review of Olga Kolsch's beautiful book, How to Paint Transparent Watercolour Flowers. The whole book is dedicated to this technique. I've linked the video of my review down in the description below, so feel free to check it out. Negative painting asks you to see things a little differently. Instead of painting the object itself, you paint around it, letting the lighter paper show through as a silhouette. Anna walks you through 3 different ways to approach this technique, complete with step-by-step illustrations. She also explains how she used negative painting to build up her beautiful composition of nasturtium flowers. The underpainting technique starts with laying down an initial wash of colour before adding your main layers. Anna often uses this to set the underlying colour temperature of her subject. It's a great way to add a glowing effect, especially with transparent watercolours, and will convey coolness and shade. Plus it helps build depth, unifies your colour palette, and can add contrast and visual interest to your painting. In Chapter 6, Anna shares some of her favourite subjects that she likes to paint, and she walks us through the palettes and techniques she uses for each one. She covers flowers, stems and leaves, fruits and vegetables, birds and animals, faces, and Let It Snow, which is all about winter landscapes. When painting flower petals, Anna often uses single stroke petals, wet on wet single layer technique, wet on damp petal veins, or a combination approach for complex petals. Across these 2 pages, Anna explains how to create flower stems, beginning with single strokes for simple stems and a 2-layered approach for some more advanced stems. She also uses lifting technique and wet and dry to apply complex textures. Painting extreme flower close-ups is one of Anna's favourite ways to practice watercolour, and here we have 2 detailed case studies, Gladioli and Tulip. Here Anna explains her favourite techniques for painting greenery, from beginner-friendly one-step applications to more advanced layering techniques. Across these 2 pages, Anna has listed the techniques she uses to create leaves from beginner to advance. We have single stroke leaves, granulating wash, wet on wet charging, wet on damp, the lifting technique, wet on dry, negative painting, and using masking fluid. No matter what your current skill level is, you can paint even the most complex greenery by applying watercolour techniques you're most familiar with. Here we have a comparative study. Anna painted the peony leaf twice to demonstrate both beginner and more advanced approaches to the same subjects. Case study 1, Anna's used depth and definition in 3 layers, and in case study 2, Anna has incorporated blooming, charging and granulation technique just with 1 layer. Tropical foliage often looks different from the typical leaves we find in cooler climates. Anna helps you see and notice these special aspects of tropical plants so you can paint them with confidence and select the right pigments. Birds, with their vibrant feathers and graceful movements, have long been Anna's watercolour muse. She loves to combine them with various flowers and fruits. We begin with understanding feather anatomy. Anna has employed 4 different techniques to paint feathers. Top left we have wet on damp wash for soft contour feathers, then wet on dry strokes for extra texture and definition, and on the right hand page wet on dry layers for multicoloured feathers, followed by negative painting for monochromatic flight feathers. Painting complex birds requires careful glazing and a combination of wet on dry and wet on wet techniques. Anna shares her favourite tips and guides you through a step-by-step case study of a particularly intricate bird that she recently painted. You'll learn how to achieve realistic textures, vibrant colours and lifelike details by layering your watercolours effectively. Here Anna gives us 4 tips for painting fruits and berries. Observation is key. Choose vibrant colours, embrace layering and focus on texture. In the case study of pomegranates, Anna has shown us her typical process for painting fruits, from creating a pencil outline to adding step-by-step watercolour washes to slowly build form and texture. Anna gives us 5 tips for painting watercolour pets. Experiment with composition, include personal objects, bring extra focus to the eyes, negative painting for fur, and masking fluid for extra detail. Anna has detailed several tips of how to approach portrait painting. She's provided a case study of a child portrait she completed in just 4 steps. Here Anna has suggested 3 primary colour wheels for creating skin tones, with tips for painting animal, bird and human eyes, which of course all require a different approach. Painting snowy scenes can be both challenging and rewarding. How to capture its unique luminosity and texture requires a thoughtful approach. Anna will describe her favourite tips and techniques to help you create stunning snowscapes. And we conclude this chapter with some stylised snow techniques for holiday projects. We've now arrived at chapter 7, dealing with challenges and common frustrations. Anna shares some really helpful tips and techniques for working through those tricky moments that we all face when learning watercolour. Things like managing water control, knowing when to stop before overworking the paper, and finding the balance between crisp and soft edges. Before we begin, Anna asks you to remember the following principles. Embrace the learning curve, practice and celebrate every step, keep looking for solutions, not perfection. Overpainting is a common struggle. It's something most of us do without even realising it. It can lead to muddy colours, overworked areas, and sometimes even damage the paper. Anna shares 8 really helpful tips to help you keep your watercolours fresh and vibrant. Things like layering from light to dark and allowing enough drying time between washes. If you'd like to explore all of Anna's tips in full detail, I'd definitely recommend picking up a copy of her beautiful book. I've popped links in the description below to where you can get hold of your own. Achieving crisp edges in watercolour can be a bit tricky, as it's such a fluid, unpredictable medium. But with the right techniques and a bit of mindful practice, you can achieve clean lines and sharp details, even on textured paper. In the case study, Anna found painting the finch quite a challenge, with all those overlapping feathers. She started with the lightest colours first, slowly building up to the darker tones, and very important, she allowed plenty of drying time between each layer to keep the edges defined and the colours clean. If you want to keep your watercolours looking fresh and vibrant, which I'm sure you do, there are a few simple things that can make all the difference. In this section, Anna shares her go-to tools and techniques for avoiding dull, muddy colours, and the specific pigments and brands she relies upon to get clean, glowing results. Understanding water control is crucial to watercolour painting. It affects everything, from how washes and gradients behave to how smooth or textured your final piece looks. Some of the most common issues are overloading your brush, getting uneven washes, unexpected blends or backruns, and paint drying too quickly. This usually comes down to not quite understanding how much water is in your brush or on the paper. Anna has here a simple step-by-step exercise to help you practice the timing of the wet-on-wet technique, so you can start to gain more control as you paint and feel more confident. Tonal values are all about the range of lights and darks in your painting, and getting the balance right is key to creating a real sense of depth. Mastering tonal harmony is one of those skills that can truly elevate your watercolour work. One helpful way is to practice by creating a tonal study of your subject using just a single pigment. It's a simple exercise, but it really helps you understand how each colour behaves tonally in your palette. And remember, don't judge your work too soon. Watercolour always dries lighter than it looks when it's wet, so give it time before making any decisions. Watercolour blooms, also known as cauliflowers or blossoms, are those unexpected, fascinating patterns that appear when wet pigment meets another wet area on the paper. While many beginners see them as mistakes, more experienced watercolourists often embrace blooms for their unique and visually captivating effects. Shirley Trevenor, a fantastic watercolour artist, actively incorporates them in her still life paintings. I've popped a link in the description below to another of my book reviews featuring one of Shirley's books, if you'd like to take a look. By understanding the science behind blooms, you can begin to harness them in your own paintings, using them intentionally to enrich your style. Anna explains exactly how and why blooms occur, and in the case study, she illustrates how she uses them intentionally in her own artwork. Fixing accidental brush marks or paint smudges is totally doable with a technique called lifting. Anna takes you through a simple step-by-step guide to help you correct any little mishaps. She also gives you some helpful tips on how to prevent them in the first place, so you can paint with more confidence and have fewer surprises. Tracing outlines for watercolour painting can be a bit of a controversial topic in the art world. In this section, Anna shares a thoughtful, balanced perspective and talks openly about her own journey and her approach. She explains why some artists are wary of tracing. She touches on important copyright considerations and also highlights the very real benefits it can offer, especially when you're learning or working on very detailed pieces. Anna provides 4 different ways to trace accurate outlines. These include using a light box, tracing paper, the grid method, and using a printer. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages, and Anna explains how to choose the one that will work best for you. And here's Anna's favourite method. Rather than using a printed reference, she prefers to trace directly from her iPad screen. Chapter 8. Composition Secrets. In this chapter, Anna shares her go-to tips for creating strong, engaging compositions. We'll start with the basics: rhythm, movement and colour harmony, and build from there. You don't need to be a watercolour expert to try these out. Anna walks us through different compositional structures and how to avoid the ones that can be a bit boring. She starts with a static structure, where you place your main subject right in the centre of the page. It's balanced, but it can feel a bit predictable. Instead, Anna encourages us to adopt more dynamic layouts. Off-centre compositions can create a sense of movement and tension, which helps to pull the viewer in. One of the easiest ways to break out of a boring composition is to play with shapes inside your frame. One of Anna's favourite compositional shapes is a heart, which she illustrates with the painting of 2 turtle doves. A strong triangular structure anchors the painting of the sunbird and lemons, and bottom right, the 2 hummingbirds are arranged in an X shape. These subtle shapes help guide the viewer's eye and give the composition real visual interest. When designing a composition, Anna always considers movement, how the viewer's gaze will travel through the painting. It's all about guiding the eye and shaping the visual story. Movement can be subtle, like in a quiet still life where your attention gently shifts from one object to the next. In landscapes, it might be more moderate. Think of a winding river that leads you around the scene. And in bold abstract pieces, the movement is often dramatic, with sweeping brushstrokes and vibrant colours that demand your attention. A strong focal point is key. It grabs the viewer's attention and anchors the whole painting. Placing your subject right in the centre is one way to do it, but as Anna mentioned previously, it can end up looking static and boring. Instead, Anna suggests using techniques such as the rule of thirds, creating contrast with colour and value, playing with size and scale, and using leading lines to guide the eye. She describes each of these in detail, making it easy for you to understand and start applying in your own work. Movement in a composition isn't just about shapes or objects. It can also come from a gesture or gaze. Have you ever noticed how we're naturally drawn to faces, especially the eyes? It's something marketers use all the time to grab our attention. Anna illustrates this with two classic examples from the Old Masters: Michelangelo's Creation of Adam, where the viewer's gaze travels along the outstretched arms and hands, and Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring, where that single glance over her shoulder pulls you right in. It's subtle but very powerful. Another compositional tool Anna uses in her work is visual rhythm, which gives a sense of flow and movement created through repetition and variation. This might show up in repeated motifs, in the layering and overlapping of elements, or through contrasts in shape, size or colour. If you take a close look at Anna's painting of the betterfish and orchids on the right-hand page, you'll notice how the graceful lines of the fish's flowing fins are echoed in the delicate veins in the orchid petals. This repetition creates harmony, while the subtle differences between them add interest. When it comes to designing her compositions, Anna begins by exploring multiple reference images. She'll test out different scenarios, as in her example of mushrooms in a forest setting, mixing and matching elements from various sources. Throughout the process, she stays mindful of key details, like the direction of light in the final piece. In her full forest composition example, Anna shares the reference materials she started with and takes us through her thought process, showing us how she worked through several variations before settling on the final layout. I really like this example. It's easy to think Anna's artwork just pops out of her head, so it's very reassuring to learn there is much more to it, and really helpful to learn how Anna develops her ideas and arrives at the final design. In this section, Anna highlights the importance of using a cohesive colour palette and how recycling colours throughout your composition helps create a sense of harmony and visual continuity. She explains three classic approaches, such as monochromatic harmony, using variations of a single colour, analogous colour, which is colours that sit side by side on the colour wheel, and complementary contrast, using opposite colours on the colour wheel. A lovely example of an analogous palette is Anna's painting of blue orchids. She layers various shades of blue, from pale sky blue to vivid ultramarine, with hints of purple and violet to add interest. On the right-hand page, there are two further examples where Anna has recycled colours to unify the overall compositions. As artists, we often draw inspiration from the world around us, and over time we also build up personal collections of reference photos. Anna has kindly shared her favourite sources of copyright-free images, perfect for building your own compositions without worrying about permissions. Anna encourages you to pay close attention to the quality of your reference photos. Take a look at the two images of the pink rose on the left. The first was taken during the golden hour, just before sunset when the light is soft, and the second in the harsh light of midday. The difference is very noticeable. In the first, the colours are rich and vibrant. In the second, they appear flat and a little washed out. A reminder that lighting can make all the difference when choosing or taking reference images. Since childhood, Anna has been fascinated by Asian art, and here she shares one of her favourite techniques, the host and guest approach from the traditional gongbi style of Chinese watercolour. Anna explains the underlying principles, then to help you understand how this technique works in practice, she walks us through a case study of a ladybird resting on a tropical plant. Anna grew up in Ukraine, surrounded by the vibrant colours and whimsical patterns of Ukrainian folk art known as Petrykivka. It's a joyful decorative style and one Anna is formally trained in. Here Anna encourages you to look into the folk art traditions of your own culture or region, where there's often a deep well of inspiration just waiting to be discovered. On the right-hand page, you'll find a case study of one of Anna's paintings titled Purple Firebirds, a classic Petrykivka example. I think it's quite lovely, don't you? We've now arrived at Chapter 9. In this chapter, Anna shares some of her favourite watercolour secrets, techniques and discoveries she's developed and refined over years of research, practice and experimentation. These are the tried and true methods that have become essential to her personal style, and now she's sharing these with you. Anna has developed a staged approach to painting any subject. It does take a bit of extra time and patience, but she really encourages you to give it a try. This method helps you make the most of watercolour's natural transparency and allows you to build depth and dimension in your artwork. The 3 stages are the background layer, the definition layer and the accent layer. Anna describes each of these steps in detail with helpful tips to support you, and she really hopes you will try it out for yourself. A poorly handled background can easily spoil a painting. Here Anna suggests 3 effective approaches you might wish to take. First, there's the loose wash, created with the wet on wet technique. Next is the flat wash, using wet on dry. And finally, a more advanced option, building background depth and dimension through the negative painting technique. On the right-hand page, Anna has illustrated technique number 1, loose wash using wet on wet technique. On the left-hand page, we have an illustrated example of technique number 2, flat wash using wet on dry technique, where Anna has applied 3 layers of colour. And on the right-hand page, technique 3, depth and dimension with negative painting. Anna is often asked how she manages to create such vibrant, eye-catching paintings without using a huge range of colours. The secret lies in a method she's developed herself, which she calls palette extension. It's all about understanding colour temperature and using it intentionally to expand the possibilities within a limited palette. Anna takes you through her process step by step, showing how even a small selection of pigments can produce rich, dynamic results. You can see this technique in action in the case study of the pink hydrangea. Shadows are what give your paintings a sense of form and dimension. Anna explains the different types of shadows you're likely to encounter in your reference images and how to paint them convincingly. Using the reference photograph of a white seashell, she takes you through each type of shadow in detail. And just a reminder, wherever you see video available in the pages of this amazing book, you'll find a matching demonstration on Anna's YouTube channel. I've linked to her channel in the description below. Anna shares how she uses soft and hard edges to bring her paintings to life. She explains exactly where and how she applies each type of edge and why choosing the right one matters. You'll find step-by-step instructions for both of the methods she uses, so you can try them out in your own artwork. These techniques are illustrated in the case study of Anna's painting Summer Grapevine, where she shows how careful edge control adds depth and realism. Working with red pigments can be tricky. They require some extra care when it comes to mixing, value balance, and the drying shift that often dulls their intensity. Anna shares her tried and tested tips for using red watercolours effectively, so you can keep those hues looking vibrant and rich in your work. Of all of the pigments, Anna considers yellow to be the trickiest to work with. It's delicate and easily overpowered and can quickly lose its impact if not handled carefully. She offers 3 simple tips to help. Tip 1. Start with a well-lit reference photo so you can easily see the subtle shifts in value. Tip 2. Use complementary shadows to add contrast without muddying the yellow. And tip 3. Consider adding a dark background to help the yellow really pop. In the case study of the yellow daffodil, Anna demonstrates all 3 techniques, using complementary colours in clever ways to highlight and enhance the brightness of those sunlit petals. Pure black isn't something we often see in living things, And keeping that in mind, Anna shares 3 ways to approach painting black in your work. First, you can mix primary colours, which gives you control over whether the black leans warmer or cooler. Second, and this is Anna's favourite method, you can build dark tones using richly saturated versions of other pigments. This creates more dynamic and colourful blacks. And finally, you can of course use pre-mixed black pigments straight from the tube, but Anna recommends using these sparingly, as they can sometimes look flat or lifeless on the page. The Black Swan case study is a great example. Anna starts with a colourful underpainting, then she builds up 4 transparent layers, achieving a greater range of tonal variation and colour temperature. So Anna showed us her methods for painting black objects, but what about white ones, especially when we're working on white paper? Well, the secret is you don't paint the white at all. You just let the paper show through for your brightest highlights and focus on painting the shadows. To explain how this works, Anna uses a white peony as an example and shares 3 of her favourite techniques. Anna starts by drawing a simple outline of the flower in black and white to map things out. Then she identifies the main shadow areas. In the book, these shadow lines are printed in blue, so they're easy for you to see, but if you were doing this for yourself, you could just use a dotted pencil line that you could rub out later. One thing to avoid is painting the shadows grey, as it can make everything look flat. Instead, Anna begins with a cooler version of the flower's base colour to suggest shadow, gradually building up layers. Then she adds background wash, which is really helpful and makes the white petals stand out. Anna generally avoids using white pigments in watercolour, as they tend to create a chalky, opaque layer that can overpower the delicate transparency of watercolour that makes it so special. Instead, her favourite way to capture white areas is by using negative painting or masking fluid, 2 techniques she's already covered earlier in this wonderful book. If you want a refresher, she points you back to Chapter 5, page 116 and Chapter 4, page 86 respectively, where she goes into both techniques in detail. One exception she makes is using white gouache, and that brings us to the case study of the white lily of the valley. I have to say I love lily of the valley. My granddad used to grow them in his garden, and whenever they were in bloom he'd wear a little bunch of these dainty pretty flowers in his buttonhole. They smell divine, and whenever I see them I always think of him. Anyway, back to the case study. Anna begins by painting the green leaves first, using the negative painting technique to leave tiny white flowers untouched. Then she adds the shadows and finally finishes with a few accents of white gouache, just to highlight certain areas where she felt it needed a bit of extra sparkle. Anna encourages you to take some time to create value studies and focus only on light and dark without worrying about colour. By simplifying a scene into just these basic shapes, you can quickly spot the areas of most importance. Doing these kinds of exercises is really helpful for becoming a stronger painter. You'll get better at understanding form and volume, creating depth and atmosphere, improve your composition skills, and even develop a more harmonious palette. To show how this works, Anna uses a case study of a gladioli flower. She compares her value study to a grayscale version of the original reference photo. This helps her spot small but important changes she can make that really improve the final watercolour painting. We have some really useful tips for digitising your watercolour artwork, especially if you want to share it in an online portfolio or on social media. Anna covers the best practice for scanning your work to get the clearest, most accurate results. And she also explains what to do if your painting is too large for your scanner. And we end this chapter with Anna explaining how to remove the background cleanly and how to adjust the colours to make sure they match your original piece as closely as possible. We've now reached the final chapter in this incredible book, Unveiling Your Potential, Strategies for Growth in Watercolour Painting. In this final chapter, Anna wants to share with you the key strategies that have been instrumental in her growth as a watercolour artist. The tips contained in this chapter are based on her own experiences and may not necessarily apply to you, but she hopes they'll resonate with you, especially beginners who are eager to improve and develop their skills. Sticking to a regular painting habit when you're just beginning can be tough. Anna found that instead of creating random one-off pieces, her skills really started to grow when she focused on a theme and worked on a series. There's something about the repetition that helps you improve with each piece. It also takes the pressure off that "what shall I paint today" question that we all face. Anna suggests ideas like painting the same scene across the 4 seasons, or producing a floral alphabet. In the case study, Anna shares a lovely series she created inspired by the Chinese zodiac. One of the things that really helped Anna to grow as an artist was simply painting subjects that she loved. She encourages you to do the same, to follow your own interests and not what you think other people expect you to paint. When you're truly connected to your subject, it shows in the work, and the whole process becomes much more enjoyable. Another really helpful strategy Anna uses is painting the same subject more than once. The first time around it can feel a bit daunting, but it gives her a chance to experiment, test out ideas and work through any challenges. It's like a warm-up where she can be playful. And then when she paints it again, she brings all that experience into the second version, applying what she's learned with more confidence. It's not about making an exact copy, it's about refining and deepening your understanding. And she's not alone in this approach. I personally know of 2 professional artists, David Curtis and Jeremy Ford, who both enjoy painting the same scene twice, but they do it in different mediums. David often works in oils and watercolour, and Jeremy switches between pastel and watercolour. It's a lovely way, isn't it, to see how different materials bring out different qualities in the same subject. And Anna takes a similar approach here, this time by changing up the materials. She experiments with different papers, brush shapes, watercolour mediums and special effects to see how each one influences the result. In the case study on the right-hand page, she paints an orchid as a way to compare cold-pressed and hot-pressed papers. It's a really useful exercise and shows how even subtle changes in your materials can make a big difference to the look and feel of a painting. And that brings us to the end of 101 Watercolor Secrets by Anna Bucciarelli. Wow, what a journey it's been! From understanding pigments and palettes to exploring tools, techniques and tackling common challenges, this book is packed with practical advice and inspiration. So whether you're just getting started with watercolour or looking to expand your skills, Anna's encouraging approach has really shone through. She doesn't just teach you how to paint, she helps you understand why things work, how to stay inspired, and most importantly, I think, how to enjoy the process. Her case studies, peppered throughout this book, offer real insight into how a professional artist thinks and works, and I have to say I thought they were a joy to follow along with. If you found my book review helpful, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know which chapter resonated the most with you, or better still, let me know if you're still awake. This video alone has taken over an hour to record, and honestly I've run out of words. I'm even tired of hearing my own voice, so I can only apologise. Now, if you'd like to own a copy of the book, and I highly recommend it, I mean, the amount of information contained within it is just mind-blowing. I've put a link in the description below, and you'll also find links to Anna's website and all her social media channels. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout the entire book. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like, share and subscribe. It really does help my channel. And maybe in future there'll be a few more cosy videos to help you fall asleep to as well. I hope you found this review helpful. If you did, please give the video a like. It really helps YouTube share it with others who enjoy art books too. I post a new art book review every week, so if you'd like to see more, do consider subscribing. I truly appreciate it. If you found the review helpful, please feel free to leave a comment below. I reply to every one. And if there's an art book you'd like me to feature, just let me know. I'll do my best to review it for you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy painting.